Are you running from your triggers? Are you embracing your triggers? And are you facing them to understand that that is where your power lies? Because that's what we're going to talk about today, is understanding why avoiding triggers is definitely not helping you. Check it out. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Positivity Experience. It's your girl, Lori, and man, are we going to have a field day today, but you got to be ready for it. So I'm going to prep you ahead of time, and I'm going to let you know, I talked about it last week, and I'm going to let you know we are going to be talking about triggers, not avoiding your triggers, walking into your triggers, and why that is so important for your mental health. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you a little PSA right now. If you are avoiding your triggers and you find, well, listen, it's going to be triggering. It's supposed to be triggering. If you feel that you are not in a space to be triggered right now, I would encourage you greatly to just come visit this when you feel, again, though, you got to be careful because you'll never be ready to face your triggers. So I would always encourage you to try to sit through it. But if you find it problematic, by all means, as PSA, hop off now. See you next week. Okay. Now, for those of you staying, we are going to jump into it, and it is going to be meant to make you uncomfortable. So know that ahead of time going into it. I already kind of gave you a prerequisite last week for the cognitive diffusion, and it's going to be massively important for this week. There is going to be a worksheet that I would highly recommend that you download if you are on the Patreon. Over on the Patreon, I have a podcast that complements this podcast that provides you with a worksheet. Every one of those worksheets is meant to allow you to go deeper with yourself. What are you trying to avoid? What are you feeling embarrassed about? What do you feel like you got to hide? What are you trying to protect? That is going to help you. So if you need that worksheet, I would encourage you to jump over to Patreon, patreon.com/the positivity experience. And then this way, it's going to give you a little point of reference. If you are on the abundance tier, you will get a little exercise with me that I am going to work with you through that is going to help you understand by a real life example within yourself on what that may look like. But you're going to have to be ready for that because you got to be in a safe space and not driving, stuff like that. And that's even for this one today. Again, if you're ready to face it, then I encourage you by all means, listen to it where you normally would, the gym, walking, cooking, whatever you're doing. But then when you have an opportunity, I would definitely encourage you to sit down with your 5 journals, allow yourself to really write in that negative journal. But I want you to realize this is meant to make you uncomfortable. Okay. So I know I'm going in hard because it's not like, hey, guess what? It's a trigger. Yeah. Woo. No, we're going to go into it so you can understand it, including exposure. And I'm going to give you a real life example about my life. And again, like how I've gotten through a lot of my traumas between molestation, between giving up my first daughter, between dealing with my anxieties, my depressions, all of those things. So I'm going to give you a lot of personal stories within myself so you can understand a little bit about what my process has been and how that may work for you. So first, let's talk about why you even have triggers, right? So there's physical triggers, there's emotional triggers, and a lot of times those two things are going to work together, right? They're going to work in tandem. So a physical trigger may be you're driving down the road, you get into a car accident. Okay. There's a car accident that happens. And you are now like, oh my God, like I'm afraid to, kind of get in a car. Like, oh my God, like I've had this. And now that I have this, every single time I get in the car, there's a possibility of this happening. Now, the reality is there is absolutely a possibility of this happening. However, that being said, not every time that you get into a car is there going to be a car accident with you in it. And that's the cognitive diffusion. That is a thought. Remember, your thoughts are not facts because your thoughts will mess with you. Your thoughts will have you seeing things, thinking things, hearing things, and you're going to be like, what is wrong? Like, is it me? Am I the issue? And a lot of times, yes, you are. And that's okay because being the issue is how we get to the space of healing. But you got to be willing to face yourself. You got to be willing to get the help, have the help, and then do the road work that you got to do. Okay. Because if you're not there, then you're going to stay on that cycle and then you're going to stay stuck. Right. And then your mental health will deteriorate even further. So when you get into a car, and I'll give you an example. I get a lot of anxiety attacks. Typically, they've been somewhat under control. I remember going over the Bay Bridge. It's a bridge near where I live. Supposedly it's the third scariest bridge in the country. I don't know. I'm going over it all the time. I'm sure for some it is. I don't know. I got a little bit of an anxiety attack going westbound on the span going to a group. I don't know. It wasn't a big deal. It was there. I felt uncomfortable for a hot second. I was like, oh my God, if I have a panic attack, there's nowhere to pull over on the bridge, right? Rational, but irrational thought. And sometimes, even now, I get not all the time, but I'll get a little uncomfortable as I approach the bridge going westbound. Like, okay, stay mindful. Like you realize that you just had it, because now that anxiety is like, okay, if I get one exit from the bridge, that's when I'm going to have an anxiety attack. I mean, that's not factual. I mean, I guess I could, but I could now, tomorrow, next week, 5 seconds from now while I'm doing the podcast. But if you associate a fear with that thing, you are going to try to avoid the thing. I'd never go at the Western Shore. I'd never get over the bridge. If you are in fear of flying and you're like, but now that's an emotional feeling, which is more trauma-based, but that's an also emotional, irrational feeling and thought, because you're looking at it and you're thinking worst case scenario. So we understand that worst case scenario, all or nothing thinking, is problematic, and it actually creates triggers for you that may not have been triggers that were established at any other part of your life, right? So your brain can play tricks on you. People are talking about you. People are saying something about you. All these people are out to get you. And none of that is factual. You are really not that important. And I don't mean that in a bad way. We are all individual people who are both amazing and irrelevant in the same token. And I promise you, you are not that important in the world that everybody needs to be out to get you. It's just, that's not real. So if you're sitting in that space and you feel that way, that's a highlight. That's an indicator to say, you know what? There's a lot going on in my mind. Let me talk to somebody. Let me sit down. You can always book a session with me. You guys know that. My link's in the bio here. I'm actually really good at it, because once you accept your stuff, right? So you guys know I've talked about giving up my first daughter. I've talked about anxiety, my molestations, the weird stuff where I had to sell drugs on the corners and in clubs and stuff. Like, you guys know my story because I'm not embarrassed by it. Why would I be embarrassed by it? It's something that mentally I've gone through, physically I've gone through. And when somebody over here is listening to it, they may be going through it right now. So if you hide from it and you pretend it doesn't exist, right? So now you're hiding from your past. This is also a trigger. I'm hiding from my past. I'm going to pretend that it doesn't exist. I'm going to pretend I'm super strong and that my past doesn't exist. In turn, that is a trigger. So now you're going super inward. You're being super, and that will create paranoia, by the way, because again, everybody's out to get you, right? So as you're in there, so then that's the chicken and the egg, because then that cycle continues. It's a thought. That thought's like, I know they're talking about me. That's where you look on, I don't know, social media. There's a meme there. That's about me. Oh, they're out to get me. Calm down. Again, not that important that everybody is out to get you. But your trigger is that you're holding it in. You're trying to be the strong one. You think that, you being secretive about your past is protecting you. And it's actually harming you on the highest of levels. It's deteriorating your mindset second after second after thought after thought. So cognitive diffusion that we talked about last week, it is a thought. Thoughts are not facts. They are thoughts. Feelings are not facts. They are feelings. Okay. That doesn't mean that you don't feel them. It's not invalidating your experience. It's not invalidating your traumas. They are very real. But what are you going to do about it now? Right? If we live in the past, you guys know my mom passed when I was almost 14. And then I went through all that hell with my dad, even prior to that. And so in my mind, my life would be so much better if my mom would have been healthy and lived longer. But the fact is, I don't know that to be factual. It'd have been different, doesn't mean it'd have been better. So a lot of times your triggers fall in line with an idea of what you want it to be. And then anything outside of that is going to be a trigger for your emotions. Right? So I gave you the physical triggers. Now, again, we're going to go a little bit deeper into the emotional trigger. Okay, this is where the emotional, and you can have both. Like, it's not like pick and choose. One's better than the other. You can have them both. So if you have experienced emotional abuse in any way, shape, or form, you may feel sadness or anger if you hear something, smell something, see something, right? So let's say if you had a very abusive situation, And every time somebody in that abusive situation said, you can be nothing without me, right? Because that's what narcissists do, right? So in that case, you're at the store, you're at the grocery store. You're just walking around the grocery store and somebody says, yeah, that person would be nothing without me. Instantly your hackles go up and you're going to become defensive. You're going to be like, what the hell are you talking about? Da, da, da. And now you're lashing out. Now you look like a crazy person, but you're not really crazy. You're just manifesting it because you haven't dealt with your trauma. See, this is a highlight. When you're avoiding your triggers and you're pretending as though they don't exist, that is a highlight. Let's not look at that as though it's a negative. See, that's the problem. Everybody wants to look at that as triggers or your past being negative, and it's not. It is a groundwork foundation for your healing, right? So that means you have to take accountability. Get your life together because it's your responsibility. Go through the healing. Talk about your emotions. Talk about what's been happening to you. Then what is your plan? What is the groundwork for that? Do you want to move? Okay. Are you in a bad relationship and you're like, this sucks. I have no way out. There's always a way out. You just are not in problem solving mode because you're in a victim mindset of, oh my God, what can happen, right? Everybody needs privacy. Everybody needs space, but you can't be afraid to get that space because you're afraid of what's going to happen in the unknown because of this relationship. That's a trigger. It is a trigger for you to even think about, listen, everybody needs their own space. I mean, that's just human nature 101, everyone. And so even if you do live with somebody, everybody needs to have their own space. If that space is unsafe and you are triggered by the thought of the unknown, that's where we get stuck. Okay. I got to get out of here. I want my own apartment. I want to live by myself. I want to be able to do what I want, when I want, how I want it. That sounds great. And you're like, oh my God, I need that so much. And then the other side of that is you have it in your head, two things. Either the person put it in your head or your insecurity has it in your head. So the person could be like, okay, well, good luck. You're not going to be anything without me. Okay. So even if you don't believe that, there's this part of you that triggers, well, if I leave, am I safe? Can I have a relationship? Right. So now you're going through that freeze, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. You're in freeze mode. You know you want out, but you're afraid of the unknown. You hear a story about someone who left their house. They left the relationship and they moved in on their own and their house got broken into and they were almost killed. Okay. Now that becomes a trigger for you. Oh my God. Well, if I get out of the house, I don't want my house to get broken into. Now you start negotiating with your thoughts. So now everything becomes a trigger, even if you think that you only have a few triggers. I think people misunderstand that your fears can often trigger other things. You watch the news, okay? You see that you're going on a cruise next week. You watch the news. There's this big outbreak on a cruise. Oh my God, everybody's getting sick. I don't know, it sank. Or, that we had electronical issues. Now you've convinced yourself that if you go on this cruise, this is what's going to happen. Oh, damn, I don't know. It's too soon. I'm not getting on a cruise. Okay, that's one ship out of how many ships? Could it happen? A lot of things could happen. People have gone to churches, got shot. People have gone to malls, got shot. If you avoid life and if you just live in a space of fear, you're not living, you are existing. So now if you're not willing to face these triggers, you're going to be angry. You're going to be secretive. You're going to be possibly paranoid. You are going to be angry. You are going to be reactive. Is that a way that you want to live? If that's how you want to live, then keep avoiding your triggers. Keep pretending that you can't talk to somebody. Keep pretending that maybe you can't take medicine. If you're anti-medicine and you're in a chemical imbalance, or even if you need it for a short period of time and you're refusing to take it, well, then you got to look back at yourself and say, how much do I want to feel better? How much growth am I willing to do? And what am I willing to face? Because you can't outrun yourself. Anywhere you go, there you are. I've said this before. I give you $100 million. Your family's safe. Everybody's great. You got a fly ride. You got a private jet. You are living the best life. But you haven't dealt with your mental stuff. You're still dealing with your traumas. So now you have a nicer house and possibly a G-Wagon and you're wearing Gucci and Prada, but guess what? You're still you. So until that's right and until you're willing to be uncomfortable, which is where phobias come in. And we're going to talk about that. If you're not willing to go back and like really relive, it's called flooding. Relive it. Now, again, I'm going to talk to you about this, and this may be triggering right now. So if you need to pause it for a few minutes, we are going to talk about molestation. If that is a trigger for you, one, I would encourage you to sit through it. But two, if it is really problematic, try to push through. But if you cannot, that is perfectly fine. Pause it and come back in a few minutes. I don't know exactly how long, but check it because we're going to talk about my molestation. Okay, so I'm going to give you a second. Take a deep breath. If you need to pause, pause. Okay, so if you're still here, let's talk about it. How I was able to not be triggered by any sexual acts was to relive what had happened to me for many years over and over and over again. And I don't mean the way that you are reliving it. Not reliving it from a victim space, right? I was victimized. I'm not invalidating it. But my mindset behind that is going to matter how I live my life. Do I want to live or do I want to exist? And for a long time, I was just existing, right? Because it was all me. Woe is me. Why did this happen to me? Why did mom die? Why can't I be adopted? I negotiated this multiple times. So anything that remotely appeared as sexual to me, not so much kissing, but if there was any touching, any groping or anything further, it was very triggering for me because it took me right back to that space. So you avoid it, right? You're like, okay, I'm going to avoid relationships with people. Hell, screw that. I'm going to avoid it. Okay. I had my first daughter. I had massive postpartum depression. Everybody thought I was the worst human on the planet because I just didn't bond with her. Okay. So then I have to deal with that, right? Because now I'm going, well, am I a bad person? What the hell is wrong with me? Like, okay, I had her, I gave her up. And then later on down the road, I'll find out she really didn't have a great life with her adopted parents. And so you go through those things, but you can't let that prevent you from living. So what I did with the molestation, and by the way, I didn't just go, hey, I think I'm going to do the flooding technique. No, this was done with a psychiatrist that I worked with many, many years ago, and it was very effective. It is meant to be problematic. It is meant to be triggering in that moment because you are stronger than you think you are, but you got to get on the other side of that fear. So what we did is, and this is kind of a little bit of the exercise I'm going to do over on the abundance tier, just a lot lighter than what I'm getting ready to talk to you about, was to go back to the space that I can remember first and to experience it yes, it's triggering. I'm aware it's supposed to be. To experience that feeling of helplessness, the feeling of hopelessness, the feeling of betrayal, the feeling of, feeling dirty, the feeling of all of that. Because see, you're avoiding that. So you go back to the regrets, or regrets are different than this, but you go back to the regrets or you go back to those traumatic experiences with the knowledge that you are safe now. Okay. So when you go back there, the productivity to it is to be there now, like be there then, but know that you're there with that person, your inner child now, right? Because a lot of times we go, why couldn't somebody just save me, right? Like nobody was there to save me. Nobody helped me, right? But you're there to help yourself. So by avoiding the trigger, especially during, sexual traumas or any other physical traumas, abuse, anything like that, or even emotional, by avoiding it, that still holds over you, right? Don't run from it. Don't just smoke weed. Don't just drink a lot of alcohol. Don't just avoid it and be like, I'm good. Don't do that. Okay. Because you're not helping yourself at all. And not only it goes back to the existing. And so what I did, especially from the sexual side of it, during that, so we did a lot, it's called flooding. So we did a lot of that technique and it was very scary. And I went through anxiety attacks the first time I did it, and the 9th time I did it, and the 12th time I did it, until I didn't. Okay. But it took a lot, and it took me facing it over and over again, but knowing I was safe because I'm here now. So essentially when you do that and you start working on it, because a lot of the trauma that we have is because we feel as though we were out of control. And most of the time we were. I was out of control, or your mental was screwed up, or physically or financially, you just couldn't do something. Maybe you were too young. Maybe you were too old, whatever the case may be. That's okay. Let's just not make it a big deal. You can't. You do what you do when you do it with what you have. And sometimes it's out of your control, like it was for me as a child. But that lived with me every single day. So if I'm kissing somebody and they try to grab my chest or anything like that, immediately I was like, oh my God, get off of me. Like, this is bad. Like, do not touch me. So my psychiatrist said, okay, we need to start with getting you massages. Okay. And you think, oh, I'm going to go for a massage. With someone who has had any kind of a sexual trauma, you do not have a good relationship with touch. You just don't, because to touch, it was invasive. It wasn't positive. It was negative. I mean, on top of that, I also had physical and emotional abuse, right? So any part of touch wasn't necessarily a good thing. That's why I'm a big touchy-feely person now. I will hug you. I will touch you. You know, like my husband's got some great guy friends. I'm always hugging them. Or if we're out, I might like touch their arm or what. Yeah, it doesn't mean I want to have sex with you. Like, calm down. But I learned to have positive touch. I did it through my own personal touch of my body. And that really helped, because in the beginning, that was not a great feeling. It was everything but that. And if you throw in the religious trauma from being Southern Baptist, to touch yourself was absolutely wrong anyway. So then you think you want to do it, then you don't do it because it's wrong. And then something like that happens. And then now you really don't want to be touched. So it's a whole process, which is why you can't do this by yourself. You know, you got to have a healing team. Book a session with me. We'll book you in with a psychiatrist. Like, it is a team. You're not doing it by your damn self. Stop thinking you can. Okay. Nobody is that strong. You will crack, you will crumble, you will have a psychotic break. And then this is going to be on repeat. So what I did again was to go back visually, feel what I was feeling, see what I was seeing. What was the weather like? If there was weather, like what was the temperature in the house? What smells did I see? Was there anything on TV? What was going on? And initially you want to run from that because it's an unsafe space. I understand that. That's part of human survival. That's your flight. This sucks. I'm getting away from it. But always remember that what you run from will chase you. You can run as fast as you want. You can go as far as you want. And if you're running from it, it will chase you. Okay? You run from something. Yeah, that's why they tell you don't run if a dog is chasing you. Or, you know, I was in Salt Lake City and they said they have these big moose there. And they said, you never run from a moose, you make yourself bigger. So you kind of take your shirt off, even if you got to let them all go, you take your shirt up over you to make yourself bigger, but you don't run from it. So if you can visualize yourself not running from it and putting your head above the horizon and see yourself with you now, I don't care if you feel you're damaged. I don't care if you feel like you're a mental patient. I don't care what it is right now. You are here. So don't tell me you can't do it because you've done it. Nobody said it was easy. Nobody said it's going to be easy. Nobody said it's meant to be a cakewalk. It's supposed to be something that you may have to work on for the rest of your life. But you can't change the past. This could have happened. Yeah, it could have. It didn't. I should have done this. Cool, but you didn't. My life would be better. You don't know that. Different. Facts. Your life would be factually different. You don't know if it would have been better. And then that's why I don't believe in regrets, right? You can go, oh my God, that was not good. I need to learn some lessons from that. So if that becomes a learning lesson, how can that be a regret? You can't regret something that you're learning. Okay. And so this is why it's important for you to not avoid these triggers. Now, let's talk about phobias. You have social anxiety. You're afraid to go out in public because you are afraid of looking like an idiot. Well, guess what? Avoiding social situations is not it. You're going to miss out on opportunities. You're going to miss out on and again, love myself, but we're really not that important in the big scheme of life. We want to make an impact, but we're one person of 80 gajillion people. Again, I promise you, if you're in a social setting and you feel awkward, just because somebody glances your way doesn't mean that they're looking at you like, what is wrong with you? You're not everybody's center focus. I'll let you in on a little secret. Everybody, people listening to this, people around you, people that you see day to day, people you see on social media, actors, actresses, everything. Physicians, even doctors. Yes, therapists need therapists, doctors need doctors. Every human is going through something. Everybody you meet has some levels of triggers. I don't care who they are. I don't care how balanced they are. But you work with your triggers, not against your triggers. Don't avoid them. So in social situations, you want to, this is called exposure. This is what helped me through every single one of my traumas and triggers, not avoiding and by walking into exposure therapy. And I still work on it. I'm going to work on it for the rest of my life. Doesn't mean that these triggers don't come up. It just means that I have different coping skills. Coping skills cannot be alcohol, cannot be sex, cannot be gambling. These addictions come from some of it's mental, a lot of it's mental, and some of it is avoidance, right? And addiction's real, by the way. And it starts as something. It starts as something from something. So you don't avoid social situations because you're waiting to feel ready. Now, do I expect you to go down to Central Station in New York City or decide, you know what, I think I'm going to go to a Taylor Swift concert in Europe? No, you probably don't want to start off rip like that because that's your other issue. You want to just feel better. You just want to be better. So you're going to go all in. That is never going to work for you. And it's going to cause more mental stress than it is not. But that does mean that maybe you go to TGI Fridays on a Friday night when there's people there having happy hour. And maybe you go by yourself. That's right, I said it. Maybe you go alone. Because if you can't handle yourself alone, everything and everybody around you, two things happen. You push people away, because apparently everybody's out to get you, right? So you push people away, or you look for flaws from the moment. Oh, that person's cute. Oh my God, they're so nice. Or, oh my God, I had such a great conversation. And you're like, yeah, but that girl by the bathroom gave me this weird stink eye. And now I can't, there's something wrong with me. I'm not going to go out. Or in a intimate relationship, you're like, oh man, I'm talking to this guy. It seems kind of good. You start feeling a little vulnerable. Next thing you know, you're like, their big toe is stupid. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Because you're looking for a reason to protect yourself. I got to let you in on a little secret right now. And I've told you this multiple times. Being the strong one, okay, you being strong is amazing. But guess what? If you keep doing that, you're going to break. Okay. Everybody needs a level of support, but it isn't going to happen by staying silent. And worse yet, it's not going to happen if you keep avoiding these social situations. So what I like to do is, let's say you're like, okay, I don't want to get on a plane. I'm afraid, I'm fearful. Okay, I was that way for many years. What you do is you don't visualize how you're going to get there. Don't be like, oh my God, TSA is going to suck. Again, mindset is your key to life. How you see life is how you live life, and it's how you see how you live life. All right. So when you're in that space and you say, I'm afraid to get on the plane. Okay. You're not even focusing on the destination. So let's say you're going to go to Aruba. I always use Aruba because it's on my bucket list. Okay. So you're going to go to Aruba, but it's a 4-hour trip and you couldn't get a direct flight. So you're going to have to lay over in Texas, which means, and you got to change planes, which means you got to tackle the first plane. Then you got to tackle the second plane both ways. So if you worry about how that's going to be, is the plane safe? Is it going to fall from the sky? Is something going to happen? What if I have a medical issue? Okay, if you do that, you're going to convince yourself that you need to cancel your trip. So what you do is you visualize what it is you want to do. So maybe in Aruba, you've learned that that's the best place in the entire world for you to see stingrays and be able to, the kind stingrays. By the way, I know that this is not the only place. But to see these kind stingrays, and it's something you've always wanted to do. And you always wanted to go to Aruba to do it. Well, instead of thinking about all the nonsense about what could happen, and all those things could happen. So if you keep telling yourself these things could happen, they could absolutely happen. Let's confirm that now. Yes. Yes. What are the odds of those things happening? I mean, if you're going to worry about the what if, negative, you better counter that with the what if positive. So when you're looking in Aruba, instead of how you're going to get there, what are you going to do when you get there? Oh, my sister told me there's this amazing restaurant that's the best such and such food that she's ever had in her life. And I saw pictures and it looks fun and I can't wait to get there. So that's what you focus on. Don't worry about the trigger of the plane. And then when you do get on the plane, here's what I recommend. A pilot told me this when I had a little fear of flying. Pilot told me this. I was coming back from LA. I shot a sizzle. Somebody was trying to do a TV show. They flew me out there. I tried to get direct flights. It was a free flight to get where I was going. So I had to do a layover in Denver. Coming back, same layover. And I always would try to get on the plane first, like special assistance, not from a medical, but more mental. Like I had to have a certain seat. Like I had all these rules. And this tall guy came beside me and he said, oh, why do you, just out of curiosity, why do you need like to get on a plane? I said, oh, I have serious flight anxiety. He said, well, I'm a pilot. And I was like, you're a pilot? He goes, yeah, I'm going back to Baltimore. I was like, oh, he goes, yeah, my last leg was over here in Los Angeles. I was like, oh, or Denver, whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. And so we talked a little bit and he goes, well, what is your fear of flying? So I could feel my heart rate going up. I can feel me sweating and not wanting to swallow. I'm like, oh, I don't want to talk about this. And obviously he's a pilot. He's gone through this before. And I said, I don't know, just everything crashing. What if I have a medical thing? Like all of these things. He said, okay. He said, so, and now we're starting to board. He goes, actually, I don't want you to board ahead of time. And I'm thinking, bro, who are you? And number two, I am going to board. And he goes, just trust me on this. And I don't know why. I was like, okay. I don't know why I thought, in my mind, I thought, well, he's a pilot. He can always jump in the pilot seat if we need something. So it was mild, I guess, comfort. I always sit on the aisle. Even to this day, I'm not afraid of flying now, but I still sit on the aisle because I constantly get up to go pee because I drink a lot of water. However, I never liked to sit by the window because I felt trapped. I tell him this. He goes, okay, it's Southwest, so you can sit anywhere. He goes, okay, I want you to sit by the window. Again, I'm like, bro, who are you? I don't have to listen to you. And, so now the inner brat comes out. Now a little bit of that, like, who the hell do you think you are? I've lived by myself. I don't need to take anything from a man. Like all of these triggers come up from this one thing of go sit by the window. So I do. And I'm like, oh my God. Oh, I can't breathe. Oh, I'm tingling. He goes, you're breathing. He goes, let me show you something. So we hadn't taken off yet. He puts his tray table down. I say to him, you're not supposed to put your tray table down before we take off, till we take off. He goes, he gave me a look. He goes, I think we'll be okay. And I was like, okay, well, you're a pilot. So he takes it down. I shit you not. He pulled out this big thing that looked like 5 encyclopedias. I'm like, what's that? He goes, well, we have to carry this with us. I'm like, okay, why? He goes, this is everything about the plane. I guess it's some kind of thing that they have to carry. That they've studied it, but they don't need it, but whatever. So I was like, oh, so now I'm a little interested, right? We haven't quite taken off yet. I'm still a little stressed out, can't swallow. Oh, my triggers are coming up because my fear of being out of control, my fear of the unknown, my fear of never being in control when I was a child, the fear of losing my mom, the fear of survival. Okay, you would be like, well, why would that be? Because triggers don't make sense. They bring up things. So if you feel out of control on one thing, everything you were out of control with in your life comes up right there. So your triggers up. So him saying to me, like, basically sit here, was me, a couple things. Me going, A, you can't tell me what to do. B, I'm out of control. C, I don't want to sit by this window, and he's big and tall and I can't move by him. And I'm like so annoyed, but I sat through it. Again, obviously he's done this before. And so we're going through the manual. And I'm like, well, what's this mean? So now I'm a little interested. Well, what's this? Well, what's this? So I ask him all of the questions. Well, what happens if the plane falls out of the sky? He says, okay. Yes, plane crashes do happen. And they happen mostly on takeoff and mostly on landing. And I literally said to him, why would you tell me that? We haven't taken off yet. He goes, because you need to face it. And I thought, you sound like my psychiatrist. I didn't say that. I was like, you sound like my old psychiatrist. Shut up. Because it's annoying to be told, face your triggers. You're like, shut up. And so I was thinking, whatever. Because that inner brat was like, okay, whatever. So I start going through it and we start moving. And I'm like, he goes, okay, let me tell you what's happening. I was like, okay, what's happening? So he proceeds to tell me everything that's happening to the plane as it's happening. So now he starts like telling me something that's like 30 seconds later, like, okay, now we're going to back up this way. And I'm like, okay. And we do. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's luck. I was like, of course, like all planes leave the same way. Right now I'm negotiating why I should still have this trigger, because you're going to negotiate why letting go of the trigger is bad. Right. So we get on the runway and he goes, okay, let me tell you, this is what we're going to do. And he tells me all this stuff. I'm like, cool. And I said to him, I said, well, thank you for telling me that a lot of crashes happen on the takeoff. This is real reassuring. And he goes, what are you going to do when you get home? I was like, what do you mean? What am I going to do when I get home? I'm go sleep in my own bed. He said, do you like doing that? I was like, yeah. He said, well, focus on the bed. I was like, well, I got to get there first. He said, shut up, focus on the bed. I was like, okay. Because again, I was like, okay, cool. So when we take off, I'm like, okay. He goes, look out the window. I was like, He goes, look out the window. Because we sat right behind the wing because he told me to. And so we're looking at the wing and the wing is doing all this stuff. I said, see, that, I don't like that. Like the wing's doing things that I don't like. He goes, what has to happen? So he pulls out this thing in the book and then he's telling me what's going to happen. Okay, now I'm not going to lie. I was a little intrigued because now I'm going to test him. Oh yeah, cool. Well, now what's going to happen? So now I really kind of am out of my stress for the most part, because now I'm going to prove you not wrong, but now I'm a little interested. It's dark time, by the way, nighttime, dark time in the sky. And so he takes this flight all the time. So now there's nothing really to see. You know, we're just flying back. And I said, okay, so like what's happening in the cockpit right now? Because now I have questions, all the questions I ever wanted answers to. He goes, well, right now, this is where we're cruising at this altitude. They're going to tell us really quick that we can pull out our electronics. Sure enough, that's what they did. So now we get up there. I'm not lying to you. He goes, yeah, well, now they've kind of automated everything. I'm like, what do you mean they've automated everything? Yeah, I mean, the plane's kind of driving itself. I was like, oh, this is not helping me. He says, let me explain. So he starts telling me all these fail safes that are in play. He goes, they are there. They're probably talking about what they're going to do for dinner, what they're doing this weekend. I was like, I mean, I guess that's fine. And he's telling me all of these safety things on the plane. Not going to lie, I did start feeling better because now I want to know more. Now I'm curious. Okay. Like things like, okay, now I'm asking weird questions. When you go to the bathroom, where does it go? He's like, well, this is what happens. I mean, I know where it goes, but this is how we do it. I was like, well, what happens if somebody gets stuck in the, like, because you have irrational thoughts. What happens if somebody gets stuck underneath the plane, like in the cargo? He's like, there's actually people who have to pull the cargo out that will go down there. And I'm like, well, that's crazy. He's like, no, it's fine. He said, you're not going to get stuck down there. He said, there's fail safes. So as we're flying, he goes, okay, we're going to start making a left. I'm like, I look out the window. I'm like, how the hell do you know we're going to make a left? There's no lights out there. You're not looking at any instrumental panels. He goes, I take this route all the time. I was like, okay, cool, fine. But you're not looking at anything. He goes, I just know. And I'm like, oh, you're a genie. Like now I'm mesmerized by this guy. Hated him 5 seconds ago. Love him now. So now he's telling me all these things. I have forgotten all about my flight anxiety. I am learning more about flying. To this day, that is what's gotten me over my flight anxiety because I exposed myself to it. I visualized me getting home and sleeping in my own bed. Learn the things that you're afraid of. So he exposed me to it without even my choice, which I'm so glad I did it. And I mean, I've been doing exposure with my clients for years. You've got to do what you fear. Okay. If you fear health anxiety, it is a trigger. You hear a beep of your heart rate. You do this. That is triggering you because of your fear of health anxiety. So instead of avoiding the doctors, you go to the doctors. Get all of your GIST appointments, your cardiologist, your ophthalmologist, your dermatologist, all of your GIST appointments, all of the other, get your blood work done, get all of that done. Stay up on your health. Oh, but I'm afraid, well, not addressing it ain't going to help it. It's going to get it worse. So what you're fearing is what you are manifesting by avoiding it. So to face your triggers is to understand that you are safe now. It is a thought. Cognitive diffusion comes into play here. It is a thought. Oh my God, this sucks. Oh my God, these things are going to happen. It's just a thought based on experience. I understand you're safe now. While those things absolutely could happen, they could absolutely not happen. And the odds are they're not going to happen more than they are. Okay. So if you're living life with the what if it's going to happen, then you're never going to leave the house. You're going to become agoraphobic because you're afraid that you go out, everybody's out to get you, right? So you have to be careful of that, because even if you don't leave the house, now everybody on social media is out to get you. So you have to be careful, and that's why exposure is key. It really is. And mindset to say, do I want whatever it is, blank, 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 that triggers me? Do I want that to continue to carry me? Because if you want it to carry you, it will carry you for the rest of your life. If you live in the why did this happen? I should have, shoulda, coulda, woulda. Why did this happen? Why didn't I do blank? Then guess what's going to happen? You're not going to live. You're going to exist. You are capable. You are strong. You can get through this. But you got to be willing to listen to the obsessive thoughts. You got to be willing to address it. You got to be willing to feel those feelings over and over and over again. So even mine's not nowhere near like it was, but every now and again, I do kind of have to go back to one or two of those things that happened with my dad. Yeah, kind of. But I'm safe now. Like I'm safe. So what the massages helped me, the personal touch of my own self helped me, give it, sitting and being honest about it. Because if you're not honest about it and you're being cold and intimacy is happening, they're gonna be like, what the hell's wrong with you? They don't know. Nobody knows what's wrong with you. Now they're going to project because they have to assume. So flooding goes back to that cognitive diffusion. It's just thoughts. You're listening to this podcast right now, right? You're not by osmosis having it. So if you're listening to this podcast right now, you've gotten through a lot of stuff. You've done it. So don't tell me you can't do it. Don't tell me it's hard. Stop saying it's hard. Life is hard. You have productive hard. You have unproductive hard. But it's going to be hard. How are you going to see it? Oh, this is going to suck. Well, guess what? It's going to suck. This is so hard. Yep. Well, is it good hard, bad hard? Well, it's just scary. Okay, acknowledge it, but don't let that prevent you. You're afraid to go in social situations? Yeah, come on. Let's go. Let's go. You're afraid to hop in a plane? Let's go. You're afraid to deal with some of those traumas, because what that does, when you hold on to that trauma, you are familiar with that chaos. If you are constantly stressed and you're constantly living in it and you're constantly protecting yourself, you are used to it in that stress, and you control it because you know how to operate in that place of stress. So while you want to flee from the trauma, you don't really want to flee from it, because then that's unfamiliar. Because that's where victim mentality comes in. Not being a victim, victim mentality. Oh, I can't, it's just so hard. Well, my mom used to say this when I'm 6. Okay, how old are you now? You're here today. So let's do some reprogramming. Let's rewrite some of those stories that we're telling ourselves. Everything in life is a program. Everything that happens in your world is a program. Guess what's awesome about programs? You can rewrite them. You can improve them. You can go back and visit them. But what you have to realize is no matter where you go, there you are. But you're there. I don't care if you think you're broken, you're not broken. Broken crayons color, you've heard that. But you're not broken. But you're here. So you can go back to that inner child, that little child or that little person, or even if you were 26 and you were in a terrible relationship, go back to that person. That person had nobody to support them and allow them to know that they're safe. You're upset with all these people, but you're neglecting yourself. Like, how are you going to get mad at somebody for neglecting you when you're not showing up for yourself? You want to focus on it. You ain't got to do it by yourself. Sign up right now. Go down, book a session. Do the 90 days. Book with me. Book with a psychiatrist. Book with a physical therapist. Book with every gist on the planet. You need a team. Stop avoiding it. Avoiding it is going to keep you stuck, because you are absolutely enough to be there for yourself. It's great to have a support system, of course. You can't do everything alone, but you're the person who has to show up for you. So if you're in that relationship and you're like, I am so unhappy, Or if you've lost somebody and you're like, I just need to be alone, but I'm afraid to be alone, or I don't want to spend the money, or, what if this happens? Okay. But if you can't be by yourself, and being alone isn't being by yourself. I know it sounds weird. Are you willing to be honest about what's going on in your mind? Are you willing to be honest with being vulnerable? Because if you're not willing to be vulnerable, you're going to stay stuck all of your life. Be vulnerable, be vulnerable, be open. I've had people all the time say, wow, you just talk so nonchalant about your molestation. Because honestly, it is what it is. That happened. Yep. Was I a victim of that? Sure. I'm 53 years old. If I'm focusing on that now, then, I really got to check myself. And it's who I am today. It doesn't define me. But it's helped me get here on this other end of this podcast for you. My healing has been therapeutic for me. These podcasts will always be therapeutic for me. My individual clients will always be therapeutic for me. Somebody going through mass trauma, fear, psychosis, insecurity is always going to be healing for me, while I hope I'm healing for them. So I want you to look at your triggers as friends. Seriously, look at your triggers as friends. That is your inner child. When your triggers are there, that's you who's been neglected and who you've neglected too, in the corner going, hey girl, hey, hello, I'm here. And what do? You're like, nah, you're good. I'm afraid to talk to you. Be uncomfortable. Be uncomfortable. Face your stuff, but be vulnerable. Power is in vulnerability. To be vulnerable is to be strong. Stop saying you got it. Stop saying, well, I don't really, because you're going to negotiate why you can't get to Aruba. I don't really have to go. I got to save money. Because you're always going to justify why you can't go into your triggers. You're going to justify this. You're creating excuses. You're ignoring yourself, and you're neglecting that inner child that it keeps screaming for you. But that's triggers. Like I said, avoidance leads to fewer opportunities. It leads to resentments. It leads to attachments. It leads to all of those things. But the reality is you're worth showing up for you. But you're not Superwoman. You're not Superman. Superman has kryptonite, right? So Superman everybody has a, kind of that counter, the yin to the yang. Everyone has it. And yours is lack of vulnerability. Not vulnerability, lack of vulnerability. So your kryptonite is lack of vulnerability and lack of willingness to handle your stuff. Talk about it, own it, and don't be embarrassed by it. Things happened. Yep, they happened. You did what you did. You said what you said. It is what it is. You did what you did with the best you can. And the people, and that even includes those triggers, and the people who created those triggers are no longer going to be part of that situation that is going to prevent your growth. So with that being said, let's jump over to Patreon. Let's get ready to do this worksheet. And go out there and get those triggers. Hello. I'm not recording right now. Where are you at? Where are you?